Protecting my family is always on my mind. In my opinion, the single largest threat that our families potentially face is on the roadways. We should take the time to evaluate the threats and the situations that they're going to encounter so we can ensure our children, our spouses, and ourselves are safe and legally protected. We're going to use privately owned dash camera footage to discuss some of the situations that you might encounter on the roadways. Just by watching this video, you'll be better mentally prepared when you encounter one of these situations. When you're in the car with a family and the situation presents itself, share this knowledge with them so they'll be better prepared too. If you end up following my advice all the way through, you'll buy a dash camera for your car. I think this is the single most cost-effective method of protecting you and your family that you can make. God forbid you're ever involved in a traffic crash with a distracted driver. But if you are, you're going to want to have dash camera footage showing that that driver was distracted at the time of the crash. That's going to drastically increase the amount of compensation we're going to be able to get for you. I guess I'm just assuming there that you're going to call me if you're involved in a crash. But seriously, you can call me. So let's break this down into 4 different categories: scammers, bad cops, distracted drivers, and self-defense or Karen situations. As a state trooper, I investigated a ton of traffic crashes. Many times it comes down to he said versus she said. Law enforcement at the time, just like now, do not have the training, the manpower, the resources, or the desire to fully investigate and properly determine what happened at each and every traffic crash. They only take fatalities really serious. If you don't have proof that your light was green, how do you establish that you didn't run the red light and the other guy did? How's the trooper supposed to determine that? The rule of thumb in my day was that you spent 2 hours on a long-form crash that had injuries. That includes all on-scene investigation, getting the vehicle towed, getting the roadway clear, going to the hospital, interviewing all the drivers, and writing up the report, drawing a diagram, and submitting it. That doesn't allow a whole lot of investigative time in there. Or there's no proof for them to find. It's just he said versus she said. Let's watch that video one more time and break this down. All right, we're gonna watch this at 2x speed, and I'll pause it as we get to a critical point. You'll see that's the car right there. He's flying through. We get to the traffic light. The light is red. Notice there's no action immediately. Why does he wait? What's going on right now? Notice the lights here just changed to red, from yellow to red. Watch that. Yellow, red, instantly, boom. Why? Why? The reason why is because now these cars that are here are not going to stay as witnesses. They're going to take off. He timed this perfectly to prevent the witnesses from staying. If he wouldn't have timed it properly and he backed up too soon, that driver in that van would have stopped and provided their information. Very intentional act here. That is a red flag for a scam. If you read the description of the video, you'll see that the scammer just wanted to exchange insurance cards and didn't want to call the police. Hopefully this dash cam prevented that. Let's move on. So let's talk about protection against bad cops. We have a few thousand cops here in Central Florida. Statistically speaking, there's going to be several criminals in that group of population. Those criminal actors within the law enforcement community are a very small number, but they can have a huge negative impact on your life. To blindly think that all cops are good is naive. Let's talk about it. Just yesterday, I was talking to a supervisor at the sheriff's office about lying cops. Back in the day, we reported a law enforcement officer for lying in his arrest reports and making up evidence, and the officer was eventually forced out. We were discussing some of the obstacles that we encountered in reporting that incident and getting this guy out of law enforcement, and he was never even actually fired. He was allowed to medically retire. Of the 5 or 6 blatant situations, they only proceeded forward with 1. They eventually got him out. What finally did it was a false allegation of DUI where he arrested a teacher who blew triple zeros and had no drugs in her system. This guy considered himself a DUI expert and a DUI instructor. That's some of the things we caught him lying about. This DUI problem isn't new. What about this guy?
The department gave the 11 Alive investigators this drug recognition log for Officer Carroll, with much of the toxicology blacked out. But we obtained this unredacted copy shared internally among commanders. Hiding behind those redactions, Penwell's negative drug test, and yet another negative tox report for a 5th marijuana arrest, dismissed for no traces of marijuana in the blood. 2 more negative tests. hiding behind Cobb County's black marker.
There's 600 DREs in Florida, and so you have the potential of running into that situation on Florida roadways as well. Let's talk about another one of my coworkers that I also worked with directly. He's in prison right now for stabbing his ex-wife's attorney at a deposition while bashing the back of his head into the table, screaming, "I'm going to kill you, mother blanker." This happened a few years after he was terminated. He was terminated for pushing a guy off of his motorcycle off duty while trying to do a traffic stop in civilian clothes. Crazy. Then there's the awkward fact that he was charged with murder before he was a law enforcement officer and spent 6 months in jail until his best friend actually admitted to murdering his own wife. We worked overlapping shifts for about 2 years, so I've worked several calls with him and had several conversations with the guy. I've experienced him on the emotional ledge more than once with his personal and professional life. I think he's a nice guy with a rage problem, but I'm not sure. He might be a really evil guy that's good at manipulating people into thinking he's a nice guy. Either way, it's an issue to be a law enforcement officer. I don't wish the guy any harm though. I really did like him. Another one of my law enforcement officers, he may have been one of my FTOs, later on in his career, ended up having a sexually graphic relationship with his supervisor's 15-year-old or 16-year-old daughter. He went to prison for it. That's not exactly uncommon. If you type it into Google, you'll see it happen again just recently. Then we have the Brady list. A few years ago, the state attorney in Orange County released a list of officers that they found not credible. These 30 or 40 officers, some of them no longer law enforcement officers, some are still active. They're found not credible for a variety of reasons. However, what's more important here is the lack of names on that list. There should be more names flagged that are not. I want to emphasize, the number of bad cops is very small. Most cops out there are good dudes, good women, but that doesn't mean you don't got to be careful, because the very small number of bad cops can cause you infinite harm in your life. Bad cops learn how to manipulate the safeguards that are put in place to stop them. They learn to mute the microphone. They learn to delay activating their cameras. They can take actions that prevent them from being caught. If you have a dash camera installed with audio in your car, you're going to put an extra layer of protection, a safeguard that's going to be very difficult for them to circumvent. Check your recording laws in your state, and I would also test the audio quality to figure out how far outside the car you can hear. Let's move on. Protection against distracted drivers. If your rearward facing dash camera video captures a guy texting into his phone right when he rear ends you or just before rear ending you, that's going to drastically improve your chances at a large win in court. Protection for self-defense and against that random Karen. We all know there's nothing like a driving incident that can cause such a wide spectrum of people to have such an emotional outburst. Road rage is a problem. It's not rare for people to get out of their car armed and come back at you. What are you going to do? Regardless of what you do, you're going to have to justify your actions. How are you going to do that? Your dash camera video. The court mandates that we use a reasonable person standard where we evaluate whether force used was lawful. Having a dash camera footage of the guy in front of you slamming on his brakes and getting out of the car armed and coming back towards you is going to save your butt in court if you have to defend yourself and you're charged. On the other side of self-defense, you might have to deal with an out-of-control Karen that's trying to put you in jail by lying. If you get good dash cam video of distracted drivers or something else interesting on the road, hashtag it Lauderlaw. Protecting yourself is a right and your responsibility. If you're in Florida, moving to Florida, or visiting Florida, you can bring your gun. I've created a playlist of all the laws that you'll need to know. Check it out right there. If you don't have a gun, I have something special in mind for you. You should check out this video on how to effectively decline police searches. But first, why don't you leave a comment and tell me why you don't have a gun? Seems crazy. Hit it hard, guys. Thanks for watching.